What's up, Team Starlight? Today we have none other than the legendary Tim Pontes here with Ultimate offering Frogs. He was able to pilot this to a top 8 finish at the RBET that happened this past weekend. Today I'm also joined by our teammate George Nowak, who is a frog expert, to help also ask some interesting questions we have for you guys. But yeah, Tim, let us know a little bit about yourself. Like, how was that tournament?
Hey, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me. It's a real opportunity and a pleasure. Um, Big fans, and yeah, so the event was amazing. Shout out to the community for being able to host something like this. It was really kind of a last minute thing, and it was a great event. I put a lot of work in to be prepping this deck for over a year now at this point. It's evolved a lot as both my understanding of the deck has changed and also how I think other people perceive or my expectations of how people would perceive the deck. And yeah, it was a really fun event.
Let's first go over the deck list because I think that's obviously what most people want to know about, right? We look over it here. You got the triple swap, triple sub, double dupe, uni, treeborn. That's pretty standard, except for the one treeborn, which we'll talk about in a second. But the thing that's not super standard about this would normally just be like a frog deck is obviously the triple junk synchron, the triple spear of chaos, and the double ultimate offering. Those are the cards that to me really stand out. Reckless Greed also stands out as well, and like obviously Upstarts as well. But those are cards that we have seen in other variants. I think it's those 8 cards that we pointed out, Junk Synchron, Sphere, and Offering, that really set this deck apart.
Yeah, so I actually came up with this deck not by playing Yu-Gi-Oh, but by playing some other card games that
Oh,
have these kind of interactions of drawing bouncing cards back from your field to the hand, and maybe paying. There's also a lot in things like Magic, where you might pay life points in order to gain advantage or tempo. And so this package of junk sphere offering, it gives you pretty much a win condition as well as a big value engine for the deck. You can do some really creative things specifically with sphere to not just set up protection and extension, but also a lot of pressure. And
And I just love this deck list, just the strategy. I love Sphere of Chaos. Before Hero Frogs was super popular, and I know Declan was as well, playing like Junk Frogs, which is kind of like this looks like an evolved version of that, where you're playing a lot more three ofs and it's more consistent. Ultimate Offering has always been kind of on my mind in Frogs because I think initially it seems like counterintuitive because you never really run continuous traps that block off Treeborn Frog, but Ultimate Offering kind of is Treeborn Frog. Like it lets you summon your guys. Um, so I guess I'm just more curious on what makes this deck to you something that you would play over like a different version of frogs, kind of what the strategy is, maybe some of the combos and plays between, I mean, immediately coming to mind is like junk synchron gets swapped.
so in regards initially to like what makes this deck kind of stand out between all the different frog decks, I have experience with Hero Frog and Forgs, and I recognize that they are probably a bit more consistent than a deck like this. Even though I can try to improve the consistency with things like Upstart and Reckless Greed and Allure and whatnot, it naturally has some consistency errors just because it needs to get started. So it needs some access to Swap Frog or Substitute pretty early on. But for why I like this over some of the other options is that I expected a lot of Mask Restrict for this event.
oh,
And so I wanted, while Sphere doesn't exactly help with that, having access to triple junk in your deck really does help you play through Mask of Restrict. Just between Royal Oppression, Vanity's Fiend, Fossil Dyna, Ultimate Offering actually really lets you play through those cards, where Frogs normally has this challenge with only having one play per turn. That's kind of something that Frog Monarch was always criticized for. Offering just allows you to extend a bit more, and you can do have some really scary turns, especially by pressing forward with things like Reckless for these just very big turns, where you can summon Junk Warriors that are just so big that they don't even get another turn to play. And what I had an issue with in Forgs, well, I think the deck is a top 5 deck in the format right now. I think it's extremely underrepresented. I didn't like how you had to side out of a lot of your engine just for games 2 and 3, and you had to pretty much make yourself a slightly worse deck in order to function. While this current list, it gets to keep in the offerings and keep in the junk synchrons. And if anything, they actually get better games 2 and 3 because they help you play through some of these common sideboard cards.
I like that. I like that like thought process going into like why you thought this deck would be a little bit better into the meta. Which, I mean, I looking at it, I can already see some of the crazy combos you can do. I mean, Ultimate Offering is just also just a broken card when it comes to making things miss timing or making things like you can dodge like bottomlesses, you can dodge a ton of things. So like throughout this tournament, did you ever use Ultimate Offering to make your Caiuses like dodge bottomless and stuff, or did that never
Oh,
come up?
almost always. You almost never summon Caius if you have offering as Chainlink 1, just because summoning it as Chainlink 2 is just so much more powerful. Being able to dodge things like bottomless, as you say, is super relevant. Same with your breakers and your vanities fiends, just being able to skip those through.
Breaker just guaranteed pops the card because of the dodging the bottomless.
In my round 4 matchup, I was facing hybrid and I went off first and I set ultimate offering. They went, set 5 cards, and I was able to use a combination of Substitute, Breaker, and any tribute fodder to be able to loop Breaker 4 times in my second turn. And each time that I was summoning it, they couldn't bottomless. So I not only got to do that, but then I finished on sub double dupe and a Unifrog to clear their 5th card. That's really just something that this deck can do randomly to just steal games. Between that and looping Monarchs and looping junk synchron, it's often just game if you get to resolve ultimate offering.
This is like such a freaking awesome thing. Like our buddy Declan, who's not here right now because we're recording this a little bit before he has work right now and stuff. He's a huge fan of Ultimate Offering. Like we both are. I used to play a lot of Geminis back in the day. Just seeing someone know about the Ultimate Offering like shenanigans is always super hype, and bringing it to the highest level. It's great. I don't think there has been anybody that has piloted a deck with Ultimate Offering outside of like Beast Mode to like to like a
Right.
relevant top 8. So this is really cool to see it happen. And they're definitely going to have a bunch of judge calls. I assume there was like judges called on you during this tournament. There's no way people knew that you
Believe
could
it
do
or
this stuff.
not, the only judge call I had all weekend was on stream. It was actually Catastor versus Sphere of Chaos about whether Catastor
Oh,
was Sphere of Chaos, which is kind of a random ruling. But I did have people like mess up by attacking Sphere of Chaos and not realizing that it had that line of text that it can't be destroyed by battle. Or people tried to bottomless my Caius when it was summoned as Chainlink 2 or higher. Things like that definitely came up, and I don't expect them to stay that way forever. I definitely had the advantage of a lot of people just not totally understanding how this deck was going to function compared to other frog decks. There's a lot that just changes, especially in regards to like spell trap removal and spot removal, where some people will try to destroy your speller trap that's set in main phase 1, or at least before the battle phase, just because they're worried about ultimate offering sticking through to the battle phase and being able to use it during their turn. And then that can just be punished by something like Reckless Greed very easily. So it kept the deck a little bit balanced with how you would set, of not just giving them too much of an easy decision.
the deck like just seems like a lot of hard decisions for your opponent to make, considering like if they don't out the offerings, they're in a bad spot. Like I would assume that every game that you won, you probably saw offering. But I have just one immediate question: has there been games where you know the opponent didn't see ultimate offering and you still won? So by the time game 2 and 3 happened, they were super caught off guard by ultimate offering.
Yeah, to be honest, the deck usually just functions as a slightly, in my opinion, better version of Frog Monarchs. You're actually not going to be able to resolve offering for some big combo most of your games. It's really just the threat of it that they have to factor in. I only full sphere comboed maybe 3, 4 times across like the 9 rounds that I played. Usually it's more just constantly having access to junk overall that you're gonna win through, and it's a very grindy deck. Even though it might look very just super fast OTK style, this deck can really grind, which is how I won probably the majority of my games. Especially with some people like trying to side in dust tornadoes or even keeping in trap stuns against me. They were definitely trying to make it as hard as possible for me to resolve offering. But the deck can just do a lot more than that, I think. And it has a lot of scary bombs that the opponent has to worry about in the middle game between the Junks, the Caiuses, the Avarices, and things like that.
One thing I'm curious about is just like a more of like a fun question for you is, let's say you have like the perfect setup, or maybe like your opponent has nothing, like no responses to anything that you're doing. What would you consider to be like your ideal hand or your ideal play in a turn if you had nothing stopping you?
Yeah, so ideally, I would want access to Substoad in some way, which is very easy in this deck. If you ever have Junk Synchron plus Swap Frog plus a Water, you can just discard the monster, special swap, summon back the Substoad from Junk Synchron, yada yada. So I would probably say if you can have access to a Monarch, that's great. But as long as you have access to Offering plus Fear, it's either 12,500 damage, or it is Colossal Army Arm, or it is Stardust sub double dupe, or it's a 4,300 Junk Warrior plus a 3,300 Junk Warrior plus a Goyo plus an Army Arm. Like, you just have so many options. Ideally, if you're going to have sub access, you would love to have Avarice, but there's just a bunch of really strong ways to coordinate your plays in this deck with just 2-3 cards, which is why I think the Recklesses are really important, and as well as the Upstarts, to just kind of help you connect some of these awkward, clunky hands. So yeah, ideally you're going to have some access to your Frog engine, some access to your Junk engine, and the Monarchs or a Trap are always going to be as helpful as possible. So I would want, in a perfect hand, maybe Offering, Avarice, Substitute, Spear of Chaos, like, and some spell or trap removal, ideally, like Mystical Space Typhoon.
Yeah, I love that. It's like almost the way that you described kind of the potential plays is really similar to something like Forgs, where instead of like them continuously getting the Fishborg to make like their ideal board, you're kind of just doing the same thing with Offering, and you're just paying life points instead of having to like pitch cards. So I think that kind of makes sense. Like, looking at the list, it feels like there's a lot of similarities. Like, I guess that kind of answered it, but I was curious what the reasoning was for like specifically doing triple reckless, triple upstart, but kind of hearing what your plays are where you want to see like Offering to go into the combos. To me, it makes sense. I'm wondering if, like, with Forgs in mind, if you see like what the like main benefits would be for like playing this as a combo deck as opposed to like that, which kind of has like similar cards in it.
The Fork deck, if it gets its Fishborg banished, often takes quite a while to kill the opponent, which game 2 and 3 can be a bit challenging, especially if you're siding out 1 or 2 Fishborgs, which often you have to. And so this deck, if you, let's say, you normal Junk, target Swap Frog, and you're ready to combo off with your ultimate Offering, if they DD Crow your Swap Frog, it's like, okay, well, I have 5 more ways to access Swap Frog between the 3 subs and the 2 swaps. And I have 5 other ways to access Junk between the 3 spheres and the 2 Junk Synchrons, as well as Sangan, and all the draw cards to just help you connect those clunky hands. Forward deck gets to play a lot of 3-ofs between the Mordays, the Salvages, the Avarices. You just have slightly easier way getting to maybe 10 cards in hand and just feeling like you can't lose. Whereas this deck takes a little bit longer to set up. I think it's slightly more balanced going into game 2 and 3. Not losing to DD Crow as much is really nice. When I expected that to be in a lot of sideboards this weekend.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I feel like you're more resilient to like the more typical side deck cards, which you mentioned earlier, like way more resilient to Masker Restrict, more resilient to DD Crows. Even like so confidently, like you have the second Treeborn in the side deck, but like you're not worried. I feel like you're less worried if your Treeborn gets dealt with in a way because of the ultimate offerings. Because if they crow the Treeborn, then they're not going to be able to crow a junk, or not going to be able to like stop like the full combo and stuff. I think the other part that makes this deck like seem really scary, Tim, is the fact that if they see ultimate offering, they can't actually safely remove their spell and trap removal, which I think also makes like it makes it such a strange decision. I feel like if I'm against you and I saw it, I'd be like, oh crap, do I keep heavy? Do I like cards that you would normally think are easy side outs are like, shoot, do I but if they ultimate offering me, I just lose. Like
Right,
does
especially when people see the reckless that first game, they're often scared to just use their spell trap removal and get punished by seeing a reckless. They might think that you're on some other draw cards like Legacy or Dargreed when they see something like reckless and Upstart. And so yeah, there are definitely some interesting mind games where like typically heavy MST are just such easy cards to bring in when they actually kind of struggle in this deck. And as you said about D crowing Treeborn, I'm actually always thrilled if they crow my Treeborn. I'm actually generally going to be hoping that they are going to crow my Treeborn, because if they allow a junk synchron play or an avarice play to go through, it's very scary, just as it is with most other frog decks. And those are really the plays that you want to stick through, especially when you're ready to combo. It's not easy to side against this deck, and I thought that was one of the advantages is that when you're playing a format that's 15 years old, you definitely need to find ways to challenge your opponent and not just let them play on autopilot. Because there's a lot of matchups that are just a bit too close to 50-50 to really expect to just consistently top events when people can just open something like a solid hand of Greffer plus monster plus burial, or a dark armed, or a return, and you know just get in some good side deck cards that they know are going to be good against you. I constantly, after matches, I was having people ask me like, is this card good to side against you? Is this, should I be taking this out against you? And the more questions that they're asking like that, I think the more benefits that you're going to find.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's like kind of what we were talking about, I think, before we started recording, is like the benefit that Frogs has as a deck over, I think, any other deck in the format is you can switch things up so easily to where you're creating a deck that kind of relies on Frogs in a way, but still keeps people guessing. Like you're saying, they're asking you like, should I even side this in? Like, do I need to take this out? Despite the fact that it's still Frogs. There are like Frog side deck cards that are good against some Frog decks, but not others. Like you mentioned, Mask of Restrict. So I think that the logic to me in playing this makes a lot of sense. It's actually like kind of similar to why you would play Hero Frogs over Forgs, where it's more resilient. You have like really standard, just like good plays. Like Junk Synchron is just like an amazing card, and you don't lose to individual cards or like a DD Crow or something. You had mentioned Dark Armed, which kind of sparked something in my head. I'm curious if you tried any other tech cards in this build. I was thinking of Dark Armed because I was looking at the Allure, and I know Junk Frogs used to play Dark Armed. Has there been any like techs you've tried out that maybe just haven't worked, or maybe like you want to revisit?
Yeah, so there's actually a super long list that I can kind of go over.
lay it on us. We're here for it.
Yeah, so I think when you're playing Triple Sphere, you want to try out maybe some other level threes. So I've tried Spear Reaper, Dandelion. I've tried actually Jowgin or Aqua Dolphin,
Oh,
which sound crazy, but pretty much with your Sphere combo, you can just stick, as I said, up to like 12,000 damage. But then as part of your combo, you're searching Sangan to be able to search that Jowgin or that Aqua Dolphin to be able to hit their Gores or their Fader or whatever that may be. I've tried some different trap lineups where I've tried Dust Tornado, I've tried Compulsory and Deep Prison. I think those have some nice play. Just overall, making them guess on what you have set is always going to be a benefit. The Reckless Greeds and Upstarts have been in and out of the deck. I think that you can play a more balanced list without them and maybe go for something like Soul Exchange, because Soul Exchange is very strong with having the option of either Sphere of Chaos if they have an empty board, same with Substode, or Caius if you have maybe multiple bodies that you want to deal with. Things like Battle Fader and Threatening Roar can be interesting. I did try Dark Arm Dragon. The issue with it is that often the cards that you want to shuffle back are some of the darks like Junk Synchron, Caius, Sphere of Chaos, and it makes it awkward. Sorry, I mean with Avarice.
Yeah.
So it's a bit awkward when you're faced with this decision. You have your Pot of Avarice in your hand, and it's like, should I just hope to draw Dark Arm? Should I play around the possibility of drawing Dark Arm? Or should I shuffle back the cards that I actually want and not the frogs that can kind of be bricky draws in the middle game? So I was kind of faced with a decision between Avarice and Dark Arms, and I found that Avarice was just a slightly more consistent option, as well as giving the deck some of the advantage as a great top deck in the middle game. Yeah, I think there is definitely a spot for Dark Armed in the right list, though. I think there's still a lot of flexibility that people can mess around with in this build. You can play some of the other tributes like Dark Dust Spirit and Ryza. I've experimented with Yamada Dragon, as it's really interesting to be able to empty your hand with Ultimate Offering and then stick that in their battle phase, maybe set it, and they might not exactly have the right cards to play around it, as well as just being able to summon it as Chilling 2 is super relevant, as usually it's scary to just summon a card like that that's a big investment if you're worried about Torrential or Bottomless Trap Hole.
Some cards that come to mind, like off the bat, why no Rhoda? Why no reinforcement of the army in this deck?
Yeah, so I think that card is definitely solid, but with Triple Sphere of Chaos, I didn't really feel the need for it. I do like Reinforcement of the Army as giving you access to junk under Deck Devastation Virus. It is a little bit better if you maybe play one or two other warriors. One interesting one might be Chaos Endmaster, or I've tried some Stratos builds, but they're a bit hard to make work. But it is nice to be able to play like Feature Fusion because this deck does need access to swap in some way, whether it be in hand, field, or graveyard. And so sometimes just being able to Future Fusion, send a Swap Frog is all you need to get your combo started.
Ah, yeah, shoot, there probably is a hero version out there that could do work, but I think you like what you gain in consistency, you lose in like power, or you even get worse hands. Like on top of like imagine drawing Future Fusion and like some bad heroes and stuff. Like I can see it being like a little too like problematic at times. And my last card I want to ask you about, you're running triple Junk Synchron. You're running triple Sphere of Chaos to get to that Junk Synchron. Have you thought about running Mind Control as even in the side, or did you have it at one point? I just feel like Mind Control can be so broken with junk.
It's definitely an interesting card. I think it would be a little bit better. The challenge of it not being able to be tributed is a little bit awkward. I think there is definitely a spot for it. I just wanted cards that had a lot of activity, especially on my turn one. That's kind of why I went with something like Upstart over Legacy. Ideally, like you would have something like Legacy to protect your Ultimate Offering and give it some more stealth. But just actually having that turn one activity is really important in this deck. And so I think something like Mind Control is a bit awkward. It's just another card that you have to already be going actively in the game and pushing forward, where sometimes it feels like a bit of a win more card. I think there is the possibility of siding a Raiko though. And the issue is that often people are siding out like their hamsters, and so you're not going to have that crazy hamster plus that play. I have tried
Yeah.
things like Cyber Valley as a one for one target, or I've tried Diva as like a solid play and with Ultimate Offering because you can go Monarch plus Diva and make some very easy Colossal Arm lines. Yeah, I think there's a lot of flexibility for things that you could try. I'm not saying that anything's wrong. It just requires the right combination of cards, and this is definitely a very specific combination between how I expected everything to synergize.
I think this list feels really cleaned up. It seems very consistent. It just has like a strategy that you are probably almost always going to see happen because you're playing all these three ofs. I actually agree with you on the Rhoda not playing it. When I was playing Junk Frogs, I actually did the same thing and I cut it, which seems really weird. It's like, yes, makes sense against that like niche deck devy scenario, but Junk Synchron's not really a card you want to see in your opening hand like you would want to see it with Stratos because it's not set up yet. you know? So I feel like playing 3 plus Sphere of Chaos is fine. I'm kind of curious on if you wanted to really quickly just go over your matchups in the tournament run, and then also like if any of those matchups seem more easy or more difficult.
Yeah, so I really wanted to be prepared for the top matchups as I expected a lot of people to have been preparing for nationals and trying to bring their best, the best of the best and not necessarily some of the more rogue strats that some other RBETs might see. And so I was preparing for a lot of Blackwing and value, and that's kind of how it turned out. First 4 rounds I faced Blackwing, 2 hybrids, and a value, and I was able to go 4-0 in those. I had some very lucky moments, to be honest. I think my opponents were making some mistakes that I was able to capitalize on in game 3 a lot. I feel like the deck does actually pretty well into Blackwings. It was the matchup that I would prefer out of the supposed top 3 decks.
Oh,
I
why
think
is that? Why do you think that it has a better Blackwing matchup than most frogs?
So I think Sphere of Chaos, while it looks like it's this awkward card that Shura can attack over very easily, what I like about it is that it really slows down the Blackwing deck in a lot of ways, because they often are just relying on like one monster at a time, so that they can just pick off cards with Icarus attack. They can just defend it with something like Kalut in their hand. They can just do a lot with one monster at a time, and they're a bit reliant on their normal summon. Trying to get them to stick 2 bodies on the board is actually pretty easy to punish with cards like Caius, and Junk Synchron also went into Black Rose quite a bit. So I just kind of wanted people to extend onto the board. And also, it often results in them trying to pulling out back row before you stick your big junk synchron play, which is pretty nice. Being able to attack over cards like Gale or maybe a Kalut that they summon to get whirlwind value, and not worrying about just getting Kaluted for a neg 1 or at least 1 for 1 is pretty nice. Overall, like the deck is just pretty balanced. I do like how Hero Frog gets to play things like Stratos into Alias and things like that, but my sideboard, if you look, like I'm actually really well set up for Black Wings. I sided in the Double Breaker, Double Dust Tornado, Double D Prison, Raigeki Breaks. And the Death Frog is actually one of the best cards against Blackwing, as you can make these Substitute plus Death Frog plays, which again, you just can attack over monsters without worrying about Kalut. Having upstarts is a little bit disappointing game 1, as giving them more time is a little not what you want to do. They, at the end of the day, have a very strong engine that can kind of outpower things like Sphere of Chaos. You're gonna just lose pretty much the burn game while you're trying to play the value game. Cards like Chagodia can just win games against them. They're kind of trying to let you extend to the board, while you can just kind of surprise them with Ultimate Offering. I think the deck struggles a little bit more with things like combo between Forgs, Giga, a lot of the just faster decks, as well as like Christia Sworn. So round 5, I went up against GBs, which was definitely the deck that I was not trying to see. My game 1 is just not set up well for Gladiator Beasts. I'm not playing cards like Soul Exchange in the main that I had in the past. You don't have some of the protection like Battle Fader, and you don't have the discard traps available. So I think it can be hard to really win if you don't get to go first. Luckily, I did win the die roll, and I did open up with 1 for 1, which is honestly one of the only ways that you can win that matchup, is getting a dupe block
Yeah.
onto the board early. And I didn't know that he was on GBs, but I just kind of got lucky with opening up into the double dupe. And so yeah, I ended up 2-0 GBs there. Round
Nice.
6, so I was 5-0 at that point. I went on stream to face Vayu. We had a pretty close game 1 where I was able to go for a 83 or a 4700 Junk Warrior, and then my board was sub double dupe. And I knew that he didn't have Dark Arm Dragon because he would have been able to use it the previous turn. And so unfortunately, I was under Reckless for 1 more turn, and I was really just hoping that he wouldn't draw something crazy. And unfortunately, he draws the Dark Arm Dragon. I am forced to Torrential in this awkward spot, and I lose that game in what felt like an losable spot. And
Dang.
then in game 3, I was just kind of able to grind it out through a Gore's play. There was this spot where I get Deck Devastation Virus down to 1 card, and it's Sphere of Chaos. And my next 2 draws are also Junk Synchron and Unifrog, so those both are lost to Deck Dev. And yet, Sphere of Chaos is just enough. That's kind of the reason that you have to play a card like this that normally would be kind of weird to play as a 3 of when you only have 1 or 2 different targets for it. But nowadays, when you're expecting a lot of value lists to be playing 2 Deck Devs in the main, you kind of have to just show up ready for that. So I was able to beat Bayou there game 3 to be 6-0,
Nice.
and at that point I was already guaranteed top.
Huge.
So going into round 7, there was a lot less stress. I went up against Bayou, Sasha Egger, very nice person, great player. I have some experience playing against him online in tournaments. We had a very close game. Unfortunately, I lost game 1 and 3 to return. It's just brutal card.
Yeah, return from different dimension sucks when it happens. Happens though, right?
Yeah. Game 3, he was able to double deck dev me and
Oof.
return burial me. So it was just a very long game where I actually had him pretty low, down to maybe 1 or 2 cards. But yeah, I mean, Value is just a very scary deck to face. The more time they have, the more chances they're going to draw into some of these scary one-ofs. So yeah, I was 6-1, and then in my last round, I faced Frog Hero. It was a pretty close match. Definitely a solid player, but I think they made some maybe small mistakes along the way that kind of resulted in unnecessary losses of card advantage for them, where I think they kind of just woke up down a couple cards for no reason. And this deck can really punish when you try to simplify down to the grind game, because I can turn 1 card into 3 cards very easily. And this
Yeah.
deck just kind of steamrolls, it's like as soon as it snowballs, I should say, where as soon as you get 1 junk online summoning swap frogs every turn, you just have the threat of extending into a synchro whenever you need, as well as anytime you can just turn that junk that you're keeping in hand into an ultimate offering combo and just finish out from there. So yeah, I went into top cut 7-1. Was feeling pretty good about the deck. I knew after I found my opponent, I knew they were on Blackwing. We went on stream for that one as well. He lost game 1 where I think I don't know if it was nerves or just being tired, but he went for a Breenac play where he had to discard 2 cards to bounce my and that left him with 0 other cards, and so I was able to just Goyo take his Breenac and put him in a really rough spot, where I think this deck has really strong crackback through those cards like Junk Synchron and Caius, where if you don't have the way to just kill them, sometimes you don't want to fully extend onto the board against frogs. And so I was able to take game 1. Game 2, I had Sphere of Chaos plus Ultimate Offering. I actually had 3 Sphere of Chaos in my hand at one point, and I was ready to go crazy. And he made a really nice read where he Solemn Judgmented my Ultimate Offering,
Dang.
and I wasn't able to really make a strong play, and I just lost this kind of awkward game that was very slow. It's interesting because sometimes they solemn your offering and you're like, okay, I'm going to special swap Tribute for Caius and attack and maybe deal 3,400 damage, and they're in a tough spot. And other times it just leaves you with these really awkward hands of multiple Sphere of Chaos or Sphere of Chaos plus Junk Synchron or whatever it may be. But he just made a really nice read there, and so I lost game 2. He also hit me with this nasty Dark Illusion that I just did not expect. I had never been Dark Illusioned in a tournament. And then game 3, I went for sub Duke. I was not able to have Dupe, which I would normally go for against Blackwings, but unfortunately I hard drew one for my opening hand, and I had to discard it for Raigeki Break. So I made sub Dupe, and he went Whirlwind Shura, brain control my Dupe Frog, attack my sub's toes, summon a Gale or whatever, and I was just instantly so far behind. And yet it resulted in almost being a close game, but I tried to dust shoot and look for some goodies, put him in a tough spot. But I looked at his hand and he had Sirocco, double Kalute Blizzard, and I was like, okay, I can't really win this one. Like after Whirlwind just starts going on and on like that, you never can really win. So yeah, I lost in top 16, but very nice player. That player went on to get second place, and Sasha Egger, who I lost to in Swiss, went on to get first place. So yeah, losses to two very good players and two game threes. So I was overall pretty happy with the deck.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it performed really well into the birds because like you had 90% of your matchups were just birds. So that's impressive because I do feel like a lot of frogs, especially like more hero frog, standard hero frog, has a tough matchup into Black Wings. So I feel like you really showed that this has a little bit of a different strategy going into it that feels stronger. So that's really cool to hear, man. So congratulations on your top 16 finish at this RBET. It's a huge RBET. It's a huge deal. You single-handedly spiked the price of Sphere of Chaos. It has been bought out left and right. Congratulations, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know how I feel about that one. Yeah, it's getting crazy.
it's not your fault, but it's more like hopefully Konami reprints. We'll see what happens. But
Yeah, I'll be curious.
but genuinely a really fun, really interesting, really sick deck, man. And we can't wait to see you innovate further and top future events with other innovations like this. Do you have any closing thoughts at all, Tim?
Yeah, last comment would just be I understand that the deck has a lot of ways that it is worse than Hero Frog or Forg, the Fishborg Frog deck. But I would just say that it is like the most fun I've had playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Is playing this deck. And that's the biggest, compliment I can say to the deck is if you're looking to just practice your technical skills, honestly, because there's just so many different lines that a lot of Edison players are not really used to thinking about lines. It's a lot more like one action, two action plays, and making reads. And so, yeah, if you're looking to just kind of explore, I think this deck is really fun. Has a lot of things that you can still change about it. There's no set list, I think, for something like this. The base engine is maybe 25 cards, and you can really explore from there. So yeah, thank you guys for having me. It was a real amazing opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tim. That was our showcase of Ultimate Offering Frogs. Thank you so much again, Team Starlight. Signing out.